Hello, I'm Jack from Quilting Dreams. Today we're going to do a tutorial on the latest Sew Sampler box. Well, actually the May Sew Sampler box, because here in Australia we tend to get it a little bit later, and I've been quite busy lately just building some new storage for my craft room. I'll insert a photo here and you can see my progress and where I'm up to for that. So today, like other tutorials that I've done, I got the Spring Ivy pattern, this one here, in the mail, and I was super excited to receive this. But what I did look at it and I thought, oh, there's an opportunity here for me to add something different to it, give it a little tweak, and then share that with yourselves so that you can have an option on how you do it. This is a beautiful quilt. If you do the Spring Ivy, it's a quick, easy quilt for the weekend. If you add in the flower, the little tweak that I've added to it, then it may take you just a little bit longer, but it's a beautiful weekend quilt and you'll thoroughly enjoy it. I love the colors, I love those spring tones. I like receiving my Sew Sampler box every month. And with that, it just fills me full of joy to be able to have the opportunity to create something different every month, and something that I probably wouldn't normally create. I generally stick to my favourites, which are Camille Ross Kelly, Cora Yoda, Layla Batik, Sherry and Chelsea, Chula Pink and Laurie Holt. They're all my favourite designers, but this gives me an opportunity to work with some amazing designers and just see what's out there and work with different colours palettes that I probably wouldn't normally work with. So let's get started on Spring Ivy with a twist. Okay, so what will we need for my Spring Ivy with a twist quilt today? So we're going to use the fabric that came in the box, and that's the fabric from Wyndham Fabrics, and it's called Clover and Dot. So, and I really love this rainbow effect that it gives, so I think it'll look really nice. I'm then going to use a Bella Solid for my background, and this one here is it's a Bella Solid M990098. So I'm going to use that for our background. So a couple of other things we'll need. We'll need our Rotary Cutter. We'll need a Frixion Pen, some pins, and a couple of different types of rulers. Now there is a few small pieces in the twist, so you will want maybe a smaller ruler, but that's entirely up to you. You can use these bigger rulers, but they just make it a little bit more difficult, so I'm going to use this smaller one. Now, what does Spring Ivy with a twist? So let's just have another look at that. So here is our pattern that we're going to do. So the difference for us is we've integrated the Spring Ivy, but then we've popped the flower between each one. So what you will notice is that the block is slightly bigger, so it's going to be slightly off center to give you a little bit more character in it. We've still maintained the white strips down the middle, but we've definitely got that nice flow, so we've got sort of a different balance there. This has been colored using a different color palette, but we're definitely going to use that Clover and Dot today to do this. So let's see how we go. So I'm going to go ahead and do the cutting. Now this is not my pattern, so I can't share with you the cutting instructions, but I can share with you the cutting instructions for this flower, and also as I've made it a different size to the Spring Ivy, I will definitely share this. So you'll see this in the description, and we're going to go through step by step how to put each of these blocks together and then assemble the entire quilt. So let's get started. Just before I get started cutting these up, I just wanted to show you this fabric out on the cutting mat. I just love the balance of this color. It just shows some really lovely rainbow type effect. So you know, we've got our reds, apricots, we've got our yellows, probably more of a mustard yellow. Then we go through to our greens. We've got this lovely green here. It's beautiful. And then we go through it more to the aqua and then into that blue. sort of like a light blue, and then through to this dark blue. So definitely a beautiful palette to work with. Okay, so I've gone ahead and I've completed all the cutting, and I've made all the other blocks that we'll need, and just left one for us to create. So with the spring ivy block, this is a really great, fast, easy block to put together. So you'll need your pieces for this block. So for one block, you'll need 6 of your smaller strips, 1 of your longer strips, you'll need 2 of the bigger white pieces, and then 4 of the squares. So we're going to go ahead and put this together first, and then we'll put together the twist block. So with this one here, the first thing we'll do is I just like to mark up using the Frixion pen. We'll need to put our lines on from diagonal to diagonal. There's 1, and I've already done 2, so we've just got 1 more to do here. Okay, so that's all done, so we can pop those aside for when we're ready to use them. Now we're just going to pop all of these aside as well, and we're just going to pull out our 6 strips. Now what you need to do here is work out how you would like them to be placed. So you can go ahead and work out what you think would be pleasing for your placement. Now what I have tended to do on this particular one, we'll just pop that one there and that one there. So what I've done with this particular quilt is I've used a light in the middle of each of the flowers. So you can use all a colour balance, you can use them however you like, but I've tended to go for a light fabric in the middle of each one, and then using your darker fabrics on the outside, and I've found that that's worked quite well. So this is how I'm going to do it, but certainly I don't think there's a wrong or right way. I think it will look beautiful however you do it. Now we are going to piece these together first, so you can either pop some pins in here, or you can just freehand stitch. I found that freehand stitching turned out perfectly, but if you feel like you want to pop some pins in, this is the time to go ahead and pop those pins in. We're going to go ahead over to the sewing machine, and we're going to sew these ones up now. Okay, so if you've chosen to pin at this stage, you'll have at least one side pinned, but I'm just going to match those up, making sure my heels are all matched. And we're just going to pop that through. Now, before I start though, I'm using a scant 1/4 inch. I find that this helps me a lot and gives me a bit of extra space, so that when I'm going to trimming down, I do have something to trim down. It's not much, but it is certainly a little bit. I find with the 1/4 inch foot, I'm probably sometimes a bit short on these quilts, so I tend to go to this scant 1/4 inch. I'm using the JUKI TL2010Q today. And my stitch length is on about a 1.3. So I find that's a nice tight stitch length. If you need to unpick, it can take a little bit of time, but it gives a much tighter stitch, which is exactly what I'm after, so it doesn't come apart. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to piece all of these together, and then I'll come back to you. Okay, so that's the 2 sewn together, so they should be looking something like that, and we're going to go ahead now and iron those open. Sorry, we're going to iron them. We're going to iron to one side is what I'm meaning, let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so now what we need to do is add on our squares. So we need to mirror image these. So we're going to pop this one here. Now at this point you may choose to pin, or you may choose to just place it on and stitch it. I'm just going to put a pin in place so that I know where it is. going and that I don't get them around the wrong way. But you certainly could, these are small enough that you could just freehand stitch. And then we're going to pop the next one here. And then we have this one and this one. So I'm just going to quickly pop a few pins in place and then I'll meet you back over at the sewing machine. Okay, so we're going to remove these pins, and what we're going to do is cut off the excess. So how I do this is I use a ruler. I tend to use this 2.5 by 4.5 ruler. It's a Creative Grids ruler. It came in a Sew Sampler box from the Flat Quarter shop. So I'm just going to pop that on. I put a quarter. I put this on the 1/4 inch. I put that on my marked line, and then we cut 1/4 inch off. We pop that to the side, and we're going to do the same on all 4 of them. And the last one here. Perfect. Okay, so your blocks should be starting to look something like this. Okay, we're going to go ahead now and iron. So that Frixion pen, those marks, they'll just iron off when we come over and do this ironing, so you won't be able to see them. The heat just removes that there. And there's one of our blocks, and here's the other. Oops. And we'll just pop a little bit of steam on there. And I find that these flatten out quite nicely, so they look really good. Okay, so the next thing we want to go ahead and do is we're going to place on the white pieces or your background fabric. You might be choosing to use something different. So we're going to place on our background fabric now. So with these here, what we want to do is we're going to match up. So just remembering your 2 white ones are at the top in the middle. Then you've got the 2 corners here on the bottom on the outside. If it doesn't look like this, then you need to have a look at how you've got yours placed, and you may need to change something because they are mirror imaged. So it's something very important to remember. So we're just going to fold that up, and I tend to match it seam to seam and across that line. And we'll pop pin in each end, and then one in the middle. We're going to repeat that for the other one, but this one goes on the top. So you notice we put this white one at the bottom, and this white piece will go at the top. That will allow us to off center those leaves. Now you'll notice that I pop my pins in back from the seam. The reason for that is so that I can stitch straight across and not have to worry about taking those pins out. I'm going to go ahead and sew those up, and I'm going to meet you back here so that we can iron these ones open. Okay, we are very close to the finish. What we want to do now is place in the stem. So we're going to go right sides together, and we're going to pin top and bottom. When you start to get to these lengths, you still can do the freehand stitching, but you might find that it's not perfect at the end. And you may be a bit short, or you might have a bit too much. So I find that when you've got something, especially over that 6.5 inches, that you start to really think about popping these pins in. It'll definitely help you get more accurate stitch lines. So I'm going to stitch this one on. Then I'm just going to finger press it open, and then I'm going to place the other one on, and then I'm going to meet you back here and we'll iron these open. Okay, we're going to set our seams, but this is the complete of this block, Now it doesn't matter for this block whether you go in or out, but I tend to like to go the way that the block wants to go. So we're just setting those seams and pressing open. So at this stage I would go ahead, make all of my blocks and square them all up. So if you're just making the spring ivy as it is, you'll need to go ahead and make 35 more blocks, so that'll be 36 in total. So then you'll have all of your blocks made ready to do the assembly, and you can fast forward here to the assembly instructions. If you are looking at doing the twist, then we're about to start block 2, which will go through how to do the twist. So I'm just going to get ready for that, and then let's get started. Okay, so this is our twist block. So this is a lovely bold flower block. It does have a lot of pieces in there, which is why I have my ironing station set up right by my sewing machine, because I found going backwards and forwards to where I've got my ironing board was quite, there was a lot of traps backwards and forwards. So and with all the small pieces, it was nice to just keep them in place and be able to shift one at a time to do that ironing, just so I was always getting it right. Like I said, there are lots of pieces, but it is still a very easy block to do. We've got the big bold leaves of the spring ivy, and I just thought that this lovely big bold flower would work beautifully with it. So what will you need to do this block? You'll need 12 1¼ inch squares, and they go on these sections here to form that the flower petal shape. You'll need 4 you'll need 4 of the 2½ by 2½ squares, and they are to form these 4 here that go on just on the inner of the so we've got the inside of the flower, and then we have these ones here. So that's one of those 4 there. So we'll just pop that aside there. Then you've got your inside piece. So I've used the same on all the blocks. So it's got that singular dimension on every single block, and that's this one here. It's that beautiful mustardy coloured bee. I think that's really cute and quite fitting for this type of block. And then you need 4 lots of 3 of 2½ inch squares, and that's what forms our flower. So we'll just grab those and pop them aside. Then you'll need 2 4½ by 2½ inch background strips. You'll need 2 6½ by 2½ background strips, and you'll need 2 4½ by 4½ inch squares. That's what we'll need to make this block. Now, like I said, if you can move your ironing station to right next to your sewing machine, this is the perfect time to do it, because whilst there's a lot of pieces, if you've got it next to your machine, it'll make this much quicker. So the first thing we need to do is to get our 4 lots of 3 here, and we want our background pieces here that go on the sides of our flowers. So we're just going to move this one out the way for now, and we're just going to pull these out. Now, we just need to place 1 on each corner. You can go ahead right now and mark diagonal to diagonal on each one of these 1 1/4, but when you're sewing these ones, it's quite easy to see that as you're sewing it through, that you can certainly keep your eye in. But if you feel more comfortable marking them up, this is the time to use your Frixion pen or any other marker you like and draw those seams. So all you would need to do is pop it there diagonal to diagonal and pop that in. And then when you're at the sewing machine, you'll just follow that line. I'm not going to do that today, and I'm just going to keep them all blank, and I'm just going to go across. So our first thing is we're going to chain stitch all of these together. So we're going to do this, and we'll chain stitch each one, and then we're going to come back and we'll trim those up. So let's head to the sewing machine and let's get those started. Okay, what we want to do now is we're just going to trim these up. You may have a cutter or you may use scissors. You might use the back of your machine. There's lots of different ways you can do this. I just tend to, when I've done this, just pop them all on here and use the rotary cutter to get them all apart. Okay, so now we will have all of our 1 1/4 inch squares on the 2 1/2 inch squares. So let's go ahead, just pop those into some sort of order. What we're going to do is we're going to take off the excess that we have. Oops, let me just bring this further up. We're going to take the excess off here. So using a Creative Grids ruler that we've got here, we're going to put a 1/4 inch mark on the sew line, and then we're going to trim off the excess. Now we're going to just repeat that for all of these blocks, and then I will meet you over at the ironing board to iron them open and start getting ready to pop this one together. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and set the seam and then iron it open. So we're going to iron all of them open the same way. And it's time, we'll just go ahead. Now, if you did use the Frixion pen, this is where the line will be removed, and then you just iron it open and you'll never know that that mark was ever there, which I love. Okay, what we're going to do now is I'm going to keep my ironing mat here, and I'm going to start positioning my pieces around on the ironing mat, and you'll see why I do this in a few moments. So we'll take our first one. May have to move it over a little bit actually. Oops, there. And there. And we have the second one here. Now, if you were worried about the direction on this particular one, you would see that you would pop the piece on the other side here so that you could get them all sort of running. I've chosen to do it this way because I said I wasn't really worried. But if that was something that you thought you'd want to get fairly accurate, then those direction fabrics, you need to have a look at those ones. So you can see that starts to pull together quite quickly here. Okay, so then we're just going to pop this one here. So that's your 6 1/2 by 2 1/2. And then you need your 4 1/2 by 2 1/2 in each here. Just move that over a smidgen. Pop that in, and then you've got your 4 1/2 by 4 1/2 in each corners. So what I do is I have this placed out like this at this point in time. The reason I do this is it makes it easier when I sew. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sew each of these together. So I'm going to sew these together, these together, these together. Now down here I'm going to sew these two together. I'm not sure if you can see that. I want to sew these two at the bottom here together, and then I'm going to sew these all together, and then these two together. So we're going to sew them in lots of pairs, so you'll start to see this form, but I'm just going to pick them up and take them to the sewing machine, which is right next to me, and then pop them back into the same spot. When I take them off the sewing machine, I will finger press, and then I'll start to look at each one when I'm putting it back down to make sure I'm finger pressing in the opposite direction. There's no perfect science, and I can certainly sit and work it out for you, but I haven't, and I've managed to get them all done so far, so I'm pretty happy with that. But if you have a look, you'll see that it will definitely, we'll get it to work, that's for sure. All right, we're going to go ahead and sew all these pieces together now, and let's see how we go. Okay, Okay, so you can see here that I have all of our pieces back on the board. So I take them off, stitch them, place them back on. So I'm going to use the iron, and I'm just going to go over the top, because when I finger press them, I finger press them in the direction that I want, and so making sure that I was going to be able to nest seams. So if I put one up, I'd make sure the next one is down when I'm going to be putting two together. So I've just go ahead and do all of these. Now I haven't set any of these seams. These are small blocks, so I've left them as is, and I think that that's okay. All right. If you're using a designer board or something like that, definitely keep everything on there, walk over to the ironing board and iron it up, pop it all back onto the designer board, so then you know where everything is, because there is quite a few pieces in this one and it's easier to keep it all together. So the next step is we're going to start putting sections of this block together. So this section, this is one section of the block, and this is the other section. So we're going to place these two together first. We're going to nest the seams, get that nice and straight. Look at that. Now these are still relatively small. You can choose to pin or choose not to pin. I've done a mix of both, but I have found that if I've pinned, I've come out with a much better result, but that's entirely up to you. So our next step is we're going to go ahead and we're going to put together each of these pieces so that we start to build this block up, bigger sections to have it ready to assemble together. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put what I can together in, so that will stay, this will be a strip, so I'll place these will go together, this stays as is, piece those four together, and then piece these two, and then this one here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and I'm going to come back and show you what that looks like, those different segments, when I've finished. Okay, at this stage, this is what your block should look like. So we should have 3 pieces on this side and then 3 pieces on this side. So what we're going to do now is join the 2 sides up on each side before we join them together in the middle. So in order to do that, we're now firstly going to iron. So what we do want to make sure of is that we have our seams in opposite directions. So if we've got one going that way, we want this one going the other way. So you just need to make sure you check that. And again, I'm not going to set the seams on this one, but you can certainly go ahead and do that. I have finger pressed them open, and then I'm just going to go ahead and iron those. Now, a lot of you might be thinking, why is she not ironing open? I use the Laura Star iron, and it makes it iron very flat. So when I put this on the long arm, it's not going to have any issues, and you can see here that it's ironed it very flat. So I don't seem to have too many problems with this one, with this particular block, but you can certainly iron open. I like to nest my seams as well, so that is another thing that I consider when I'm doing mine. So this one here, because they're running together, we want to make sure that they are all going the same way. So we're going to, just going to change the shape here. And we've got them all running the same way. Every now and again my iron lets out steam and then I get a bit of water on here, but it's never affected them yet. Okay, and so just looking at the last one, we just want to make sure we get that ironed nicely there. Excellent. Okay, so what we'll have now is 6 pieces, and we're going to go ahead and iron them. So with these, I am going to put going to put pins in. Now, we may find that there is a little bit here on the edge that it's just not going to quite meet up, and that's okay, but probably aim to have that on the outside if you can, if it's not perfect. Most of mine have met up, so every now and again though you will get one that's not going to meet up. So we're going to go ahead and stitch this side together, and we're going to stitch this side together, and then we're going to come back and do the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and do this now, and let's go and sew these ones together. Okay, so at this stage, this is what it should look like. So it's really starting to form that flower shape now. So all we need to do is stitch these together, but we're just going to finish our pressing. So what you'll need to look at here is if you've pressed this one, these connecting seams, if one is pressed up already, we want to make sure we press the other one down. So this one here will go down. Just move that out the way. And then if we match that up again, this one here is going up, so we want to make sure this one's going down as well. Okay, so this one is going down, so we want to make sure when we're pressing on this other side that we have that one going up. Now you can set your seams here if you like. I just found with this block it was okay for me to not on this one. This one's going up, so I want to press this one down. So this is what it looks like at this stage. So we're really starting to form that flower, and it doesn't take very long. Whilst we have lots and lots of pieces for this block, they come together really quickly. So the thing to think about when we are putting these two together is just nesting those seams. So let's go ahead and pop these together, and let's nest those seams. So rather than doing the ends first, I like to go ahead and nest the seams first, and then I know that I've got them all in place. So going ahead, nest the seams, get that feel there. If you've ironed open, no problems, you'll just you'll match them up just the same way that you always do. We'll pop that in, and just down the other end here, let's pop that one in there as well. Perfect. Okay, then I'm just going to put one in each end. And we're going to go ahead and sew that one now. Okay, so this is what we should finish up with. So I'm just going to, on this one here, I have been setting the seam, and then I've still been ironing to one side, and I'm finding that it's still ironing very flat. Now if your iron, you find that it doesn't, then definitely iron open at this stage. And there we go. So what we're going to do now is we're going to square up this block, and then we're going to assemble. So at this stage, if you were doing the spring ivy with a twist, what you'll need is 9 of the leaf blocks and 9 of the flower blocks. That's what you'll need at this stage. I'm not sure what I said earlier, but you definitely only need 9 of the leaf and then 9 of the flower. Okay, so we want to make this block 14.5 by 10.5. Now this is different to the leaf. in terms of the height. The width is the same, but I needed to do that so that we could fit this all in. And I mean, we could have made it a little bit different, but I think it looks really nice how we've got it here, and it works well. So I'm just going to go ahead now and square this block up, and if you've done your blocks, then please go ahead and square yours up to 10.5 by 14.5. So I'm just going to pop that there and take off that excess. So you will find if you use the scant 1/4 inch, you will have a little bit to take off, but not much. But if you used the 1/4 inch, I generally am running a tiny bit short. I think it's maybe my foot, the foot that I use, but I haven't looked into why that's happening yet. It could be for quite a few different reasons. And then we want this one here, 10.5, and that's not too bad. We're just going to take off a little of that excess there. So pop this ruler on. Just take off those little bits there. So if you haven't squared up your leaf blocks, make sure you do that now according to the pattern from the Sew Sampler box. And if you're not a member of the Sew Sampler, then I do believe the patterns come out at some stage after the boxes have all been shipped. I'm just not sure when that is. You'd need to contact the Fat Quarter shop to find that out. So at this stage, what you will have is 9 of the flower blocks and 9 of the leaf blocks. And don't they look beautiful together? I think the balance of these big bold flowers and the big bold leaves really does make it look just wonderful. Now what we're going to do is move into the assembly. So for the assembly, if you've done all your leaves, follow the instructions. We're just going to go one down after the other. If you're doing the flower with the leaf, what we need to do is we're going to have a leaf in the first row. We start with a leaf at the top, and then we go down with a flower, and we do alternate them as we go. What you want to do, I'm just going to move this over here so that you can see. I need to get a different lens, I think. I've just bought this camera, but it's not quite giving me what I need, so I need to play with it a little bit more. We need to potentially shift how we have this corner stem, because we need to have it the opposite way to what we've got our flower blocks, and most of my flower blocks are all done exactly the same. So if you've stuck with the same sort of pattern for each flower block, then you'll know which way the stem needs to go. So we're going to create the row now and sewing them together. So if you are doing it this way, these strips will be a little longer than if you're just doing these spring ivy blocks. And I'll let you know that small variation when we put in our middle panels. So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm going to piece these all together, and I'm going to come back to you when that's all done. Okay, so at this stage we should have 3 strips put together. And if you are doing the spring ivy as it is, then you'll have lots of spring ivy together. If you are doing the spring ivy with a twist, every second one will be the nice big flower block mixed in with this lovely leaf block. So you should have 3 of those strips now. So we're going to move on to doing the inner sashings and the border. I'm calling it a border because I'm actually going to put a strip across the top as well as the sides, just because I think that will finish it off quite well for the quilt that I'm making. So I've gone ahead and I've cut the width of fabric 2.5 inches by width of fabric, and I'm going to join them together end to end. Now if you did the spring ivy, at this stage follow the instructions for when you get to subcutting. If you have done it with a twist, then you'll need to subcut down to 59 inches. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to stitch these end to end and then we will iron them open and come back here to do the sub-cutting down for our twist. So let's get started. So when I'm doing my pieces, I'll grab two, I keep them in a stack next to me. I'll grab two, join that side, that together. I don't cut off the selvages, I just use the selvages as a guide and stitch that one through. Then I get the end of that strip, fold it over, and then bring my next one on top. So I'll just grab that one there. And then I'll keep going until I've got all 7 strips joined together. Okay, so our strips are all here and we're just going to cut off that end bit, and I did that on the corner there, so just pop that there. So what we now need to do is we need to make sure we've got these at 59. So we want to, if we're going to use our board, which we will in this scenario, we're going to match this up to 29.5 and double it over. So it's just a matter of, you could use a rule, a measuring tape, just pull it along and you'll get the same result, or you can use this method. Either one will work just perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead now and subcut these down. So I just need to know I've got 29.5 doubled over. Pop that on the half line there. Try and keep that nice and straight, and then I'll cut that down this end here at that at the 0 mark, and there we have our first strip. So go ahead and cut your strips, and then we're going to come back once they're all cut, and we'll start assembling the sashing to the quilt. Okay, so you should have all of your strips cut. Now, sorry, I'm not sure if I said 59 or 59.5, and I think I might have said 59, but it's actually 59.5 is what you'll need. I didn't allow for the seam at each end. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pop a pin in one end, and we're going to take this through to the other end. Now make sure when you're doing this that you have your seams, you have right sides facing together, and we'll pop one in this end here as well. Then what I like to do is find that halfway point. Now these are long, so it can be a little tricky, but if you've got a nice floor space, then go ahead and pop this on the floor and do it. But I'm just going to use the mat that I've got in front of me today and take that along and get that halfway point. Just like that. Now the reason I do that is because if you just go ahead and sew this on, and you can certainly do that, but what you might find is you're going to be too short or too long at the end. If you know your length of your fabric and what you need, always cut them to the right length. One on one end, one on the other, in the middle, and then put in a few extra pins, especially with one this long. You want to pop in a few extra pins and to secure it nicely so that it doesn't move too much while you're sewing. Then we'll go ahead and sew this. What this will do is make sure you've got it fairly accurate, and then when you're long arming yourself or you're sending it to a long arm machinist, it will be more square to allow them to line it up on the long arm machine. So if that's something that you've learnt today and it's a handy tip, fabulous. If not, okay, let's go ahead and we're going to take this over and we're going to sew this. I'm going to add in all the other sashings and we're going to come back to place the top and bottom border on. Let's get sewing. Okay, so after we put these sashing strips on, we should have something that looks very similar to what I've got here. We've got the leaves, the flowers and the leaves all on here, and that really is starting to look quite great. We'll just see what we can get here. I'm still trying to work out this camera and I haven't quite got it there yet, but we will get there eventually. Okay, so that's where we are at the moment. Now in the spring ivy pattern, this is where you would finish. What I'm going to do is go ahead and put a border on the top and put one on the bottom. So what you'll need to be able to do that for this one here is you'll need 2 strips. They'll need to be 51.5 inches by 2.5 inches. And what we'll do is, again, just like we do with all the other ones, we're going to pin right sides together, pop a pin at each end and then one in the middle, and then you can put a couple of extra ones in as you go. I'm going to go ahead and pop them on, and then I'm going to come back and show you the quilt finished with these additional borders on it. Just before we take it to the long arm and get it long armed and ready to put the binding on. Okay, let's go. Okay, so we have our finished quilt top. We've popped on these top borders, and I think if just popping those on with the sashing, I think that just completes the quilt quite nicely. So again, we brought in this lovely flower block in with the spring ivy block from the Sew Sampler box, and I think it actually looks beautiful. I love the colour of this fabric. I think it is absolutely amazing. I probably wouldn't have picked it, and that's why I get the Sew Sampler box, because they give me so many different options that I haven't thought of, and I just love working with them to see what I can do. Now with this particular one, we are using a lot of white, and we've got a lot of colour in this fabric. So one thing that we'll want to do before you send this to the long armers, make sure you give it a nice iron over, even if you're doing your own quilting. Give it a nice iron, and then turn over and start to look at those threads that you might have that are loose. Now this isn't too bad, but if you've got loose red threads like this one here, you're going to want to cut those off. Now those threads will show through when your quilting is complete. So you'll see a red line through that beautiful quilt. So we want to avoid that. So make sure you square up your quilts, give it a nice iron, get rid of those threads that might come through and show once it's quilted, and then pop it on your long arm machine or your domestic machine, or send it to your long arm quilter and get it quilted up, because I think this is beautiful. This is a lovely quilt to drape over the back of a chair, take it to picnics, take it to the sports. In Australia where I am, it's really cold at the moment, So this would be an ideal quilt. You could pop some minky on the back and make it just that little bit warmer. Or it's really quite a fresh looking type quilt. So to me, it's a real spring. So, you know, I'll go for definitely just a white backing on this one. You know, just use it on the back of a chair is probably where mine will be. And I'll also make a coordinating pillow that will go with it. Which brings me to, so at the end of this is the fabric that I have left over. So what I'll look to do is see how I can incorporate these leftovers into the binding. I always like to use as much as I can when I'm doing the sew sampler boxes, and just see if I can integrate it where I can. So it'll either go into some pillows, or I'll put it into the binding and create, you know, maybe a binding that has a bit of white and then utilizes these scraps to complete this beautiful quilt. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I'm going to pop it on the long arm, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you the finished product. Okay, so now we've finished the quilting of Spring Ivy with a twist. What we can do now is do the binding. Now the binding that I've done, I've just used the scraps, and so I've put some white backing and then used the scraps that I've got left over. So there's a 6.5 inch strip, 2.5 inch strip, 6.5, and then the backing is a 5 inch strip. So I've gone ahead and I've made that. With using all of that, I end up with probably only one strip left, which I think is pretty good. Not enough for me to do a cushion, but enough that I'm very happy that I've been able to use most of this fabric that I got in the Sew Sampler box. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to do the binding. And I'm going to come back to you once that binding's finished and show you the completed quilt. I'm really happy with the quilting on this one. It's actually, I think it's called Clementine End to End. And I like the fact that we've got these big flowers that help balance off the big flower that we've got on our quilt. So these lovely big flower and this one here. So I thought that that was a nice balance. And then we've got these lovely leaves in here, which then also balance off the lovely Spring Ivy leaf. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the binding, and I'm going to pop back as soon as that binding is all complete. And just like that, we've finished today's quilt. Today's tutorial was Spring Ivy with a twist. So we got the Spring Ivy from the Sew Sampler box and we created a little twist. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and please, if you enjoyed it, select the like button. If you'd like to see more of my sew samplers with a twist, then please subscribe to my channel. Not every month do I add a twist, because some of them have got a lot of dimension in them already, and I don't need to add anything. They are beautiful the way they are. Then other months I kind of look at them and go, what can I do different? How can I change this to make it more my style? And with that, that's when I come up with my twists. So for this month, we did do a twist. I've thoroughly enjoyed creating this with you. I hope you've enjoyed creating it with me. For now, have a great day, keep crafting, and thank you for joining. Bye.